Max, what do you want for dinner?
Justice. With a side order of spaghetti.
Well, I must say, that was really, really good. I mean, I thought this movie was just going to be all hype, and then it would fall flat on everything else, but that wasn't the case. The Batman by Matt Reeves is a definite masterpiece with some flaws that are little that won't necessarily bring the whole movie down. It's a 3-hour-long adventure that kind of starts off a little bit slow, but right around the 45-minute mark, it definitely does pick it up. However, I do love the beginning. Matt Reeves said it was going to be more horror movie-oriented in some way when it came to the Riddler because of the whole serial killer thing, and we kind of get a homage to the first Halloween movie where we have, you know, like how you can see from Michael Myers' point of view through the mask and the heavy breathing. It's basically what we get with the Riddler, and ironically this takes place on Halloween night as well. The Riddler's going around, he's killing politicians, he's killing corrupt cops, because he's doing it for the greater good of Gotham City. Like, he's trying to be that masked vigilante that Batman is, but instead he just goes around brutally murdering people and shows it live on TV or just on his live streams, because he has like a, I guess their equivalent of Instagram, where he goes on and he's like, here's so-and-so, and this is what they've done, and they deserve to die, and all this kind of stuff. Like, the Riddler is really, really freaky in this. Paul Dano does a good job of just being fucking insane. That was amazing. We really don't see his face till the end when he gets caught, or at least intentionally gets caught, which was all part of the plan. And with Robert Pattinson's Batman, this is the most distraught Batman I think we have ever seen. He is just so, he's like completely lost it. Like with the other ones, they're kind of in a better state of mind, and even with Christian Bale's, who, like, you know, started from the beginning to the end, he never really went off the rails too much. He kind of, you know, still had to figure himself out, but by the end of the movie he knew what he wanted to be. With Robert Pattinson's, he's only 2 years into the whole Batman thing as Bruce Wayne, so he's still trying to figure out what to do, how this is going to work, and all that. The only thing that remains the same is he does have that no-kill policy. He does beat the shit out of people, but he's still not going to kill them in any way. I mean, he was just like, this interpretation's weird, because usually when we see Bruce Wayne, we see this guy, he's got a woman or two wrapped around his arm, they're, you know, like, oh my god, Bruce Wayne, but he's just not like that in this movie. Like, he doesn't have women attached to him. He's not really friends with a lot of people. He just kind of keeps to himself. He's like an outcast. He's an introvert, and nobody really wants anything to do with him. He doesn't want anything to do with them. It's pretty interesting. However, we only see him as Bruce Wayne through like 10% of this movie. Most of the time when you see Robert Pattinson on screen, he's wearing the Batman suit, so that was pretty cool. One of the things in this movie that really got me was the Batman-Alfred relationship. It's definitely one over the years we've seen where, you know, Bruce does see Alfred as the father figure. They get into their beef a little bit, but in the end they always end up making up and all this kind of stuff, and just, you know, realizing that they're there for each other. But in this movie, it's a bit different. I like Andy Serkis as Alfred, but I don't like the way they took this with those two characters. I mean, Bruce is just really, really, like, mean to Alfred, and Alfred just kind of takes it, and Alfred gets fed up. Now, they do almost kill off Alfred, spoiler alert, when Riddler sends Batman one of the bombs in the mail. Alfred opens it up without knowing, and boom, he ends up in the hospital, and one of the last scenes you see him in is when he kind of tells Bruce the truth about everything, because Bruce thinks that, his dad had this reporter killed, and that's why Maroney put the hit out on Thomas Wayne and his mother, was because, you know, oh, and the reason Thomas Wayne did that was because while he was running for mayor, there was information about his wife Martha coming out that, oh, she's a related to the Arkhams, and she was in Arkham Asylum herself for being a little crazy, so to protect her, he tried to bribe the reporter with money, saying, hey, don't put this story out, and he wouldn't budge, so his last resort was to go to Falcone, which they say Falcone in this movie, but in Batman Begins they say Falcone. You can say it either or. It's like when people say Ra's al Ghul or Ra's al Ghul. There's no right or wrong way to say it. Whichever way is preferred. I like Falcone better, so I'm going to say Falcone. Anyway, Thomas Wayne goes to Falcone and says, hey, if you can just, like, get this guy not to do this. Like, don't kill him, but just find a way to make him, you know, not put this story out. And in the end, Falcone ends up killing the guy anyway, and Thomas Wayne is distraught by it, because I think it was Bruce thought that his father put the hit out on this guy when that wasn't the case. Alfred was like, no, your father didn't want that guy dead, but Falcone killed him anyway, and then it was Falcone, not Maroni, who put the hit out on your father and mother and killed them a week later after all that happened. And Falcone's basically been leading the police force and been the mayor of Gotham for the past 20 years, but he's been doing it underground. Like, it was just very weird there. So yeah, Falcone's probably like the second main villain in this movie, mainly because this is where Selina Kyle comes into play a lot of the time. Zoe Kravitz's Catwoman, where she knows that Carmine Falcone's her father, that he killed her mother, and she's basically just trying to get a revenge. Now, Batman does end up stopping her from killing him at some point, but the Riddler ends up doing that anyway. And with her character, it's interesting, and I think she does a great job. One of the things I think that's missing from the character that you kind of have to include is that flirty, feminine charm. Like, the feminine charm's there, but, like, Catwoman always uses her flirting abilities to kind of, you know, interrogate and get information when she needs it. She uses it a little bit in that club scene, you know, where she's kind of just, like, talking, pretending she's interested with the guys and kind of, you know, touching the guy's leg, but she's very hesitant to do it, and most people will be like, well, that's because, you know, she's just starting out as Catwoman. She's not really sure what to do with herself. And any other adaptation, once she becomes Catwoman, she just kind of knows what she wants to do. Like, it's cool. It's cool. Don't get me wrong. I think we've had 3 great big screen adaptations of the character. But with Zoe Kravitz, I wanted a little bit more of that flirtiness that comes with the character. Because I get, with female characters, it can definitely be annoying, as we see that all the time, especially in DC. I mean, Poison Ivy's another one of those characters that uses her looks and charm, and Harley Quinn every so often does it. She doesn't do it as often as Catwoman or Poison Ivy, but when she feels it's the right time to do it, she does it, because she still knows that she has somewhat of that feminine charm as well, you know. So there's some characters you can take that away from and it'd be okay, but one of the 2 characters that isn't Poison Ivy that you just can't take that away from is Catwoman. It seemed to be missing from the repertoire, and it was definitely visible. But again, Zoe Kravitz, I think, nailed what she had to do. I don't really like the mask on her outfit. It looks a little weird, but it's supposed to feel cheap, and I guess, you know, like it was like handmade, because she's not necessarily rich. She lives in a little crummy apartment in Gotham City, so there's that as well. We have the Penguin, who is a little bit different. These next 2 characters we're going to talk about are actually starting off not as the big guys in this movie. We have the Penguin and Jim Gordon. Now, with the Penguin, he's known as the Kingpin, the main guy, but in this one, no, he's not quite there yet. He more works for Falcone, and is more of the Falcone punching bag in this case. Like, Penguin's also not necessarily a villain in this movie. I think Batman just more after him to get answers. So this is just before Penguin becomes, you know, the big feared leader that he is. And I think Colin Farrell does a great job. He's actually really unrecognizable as the character because of all the makeup, but I think the makeup team does a good job there. They definitely deserve credit when it comes to that. And people are nitpicking with this Penguin, saying, oh, where's the top hat? Where's the umbrella, the monocle, the cigar? And I'm just like, look, I mean, yeah, the character's always had it, but Matt Reeves is going for a more, I guess you can say, realistical type, you know, movie here. Like, you can look at the Penguin and go, yeah, this guy is definitely real. They call him the Penguin because of his size and the way he kind of waddles a little bit, but he's not trying to act like a penguin. Like, he's not doing the whole quack quack thing like Danny DeVito was, or we saw in the cartoons or in the old show back in the day. You know, which is okay, because the animated series was always made for adults and kids, so he had that darker edge, but still that comic book feeling. It was the same with Danny DeVito's character, and of course, like I said back in the 66 cartoon, that was just strictly for kids, so they had to find a way to make the Penguin kind of like a fun villain in some sorts. But with this one, this is just showing you that, hey, this guy's working for the mafia. He eventually becomes like a mafia boss, so he's going to be more, you know, tough and just more human-like in this case, I think, than the actual Penguin we know. So I had no problem with it. I thought it was done very, very well in this case, and we got a great interpretation of that. Now with Gordon, he's not Commissioner Gordon yet. He's Lieutenant Gordon, so he's still kind of down on the food chain. However, he is the only one in the Gotham City PD that trusts Bruce, or not Bruce Wayne, they don't know that he's Bruce Wayne, trusts Batman to do anything. Like, a lot of the cops are still very hesitant with him, whereas Lieutenant Gordon is like, well, I mean, he's with us, guys. I just have this feeling. Like, there's this part in the movie where they kind of think that Batman might be the murderer. This is before they find out the Riddler is. But Gordon's like, no, he's not the murderer. This isn't what he does. He doesn't want to kill people. He wants to help rid the streets of crime in Gotham by bringing them to justice and all this kind of stuff. And I also truly love the scene where they have Batman in and he's going a little berserk, hitting cops and all that, and Gordon's like, just give me 5 minutes with him and I'm sure I can get him to calm down, which was just a ploy for Jim Gordon to give Batman the keys and be like, hey, you just go that way, you can get out. So from stopping Gordon from getting in trouble to make it look like an escape, Batman just clocks him in the face and just gets away. Like I said, it was to kind of make sure Gordon didn't get in trouble and make it look like an escape in itself. So I thought that was pretty cool. This just really goes into Batman and Gordon's kind of friendship that they have going on. Like, they're really, really close. Gordon goes on pretty much a lot of Batman's adventures in this movie. Like, it's those two. Like, in this one, he is Batman's Robin. I'm not saying that's what Matt Reeves is going for, but, you know, he was the second-hand man in this movie to Batman for most of it. Then, at the end of the movie, I think there's the cameo that we were kind of all expecting but weren't sure was going to happen. And no, Margot Robbie was not in this movie. I don't know why she was on the cast listing for so long, only to be taken off like 2 days before. I don't know, maybe that was just a ploy, but she is not in this movie. Also, one other thing I wanted to talk about before the cameo that I forgot to mention in this movie is that usually in the Batman movies, at the end, he always ends up fighting with the bad guy at some point in time. I mean, whether you're talking about Tim Burton, Joel Schumacher, Christopher Nolan, or even the Ben Affleck movies, even though he never had a solo movie, but he was always fighting the bad guy in the end. In this one, Robert Pattinson doesn't fight. When he gets caught and put in Arkham, he stays in Arkham. Batman has to fight off his goons, I guess, or his cult members, because he kind of just starts this whole like cult following thing from assassinating the mayor-elect and all that stuff. So that was pretty interesting too, that Matt Reeves was like, I'm not going to have him fight the bad guy. I'm going to have him fight the henchmen that he has out there that are trying to do this, because there's like hundreds of them, and it would make it a bit tougher for the character, considering the fact that Riddler was never much of a combat fighter to begin with. He even mentions that while he's in Arkham. He's like, I mean, I can't fight. That's not what I do best. It's more the mind tricks. So kudos to Matt Reeves on that. I thought that was pretty cool. A little weird, but still, it made a ton of sense. However, the Joker is, major spoiler, you don't really see much. I mean, he's just kind of sitting in the jail cell next to Riddler. They get into this conversation and then he laughs, and that's when you realize, oh, this is who that is. I mean, you can kind of see his face in the darkness. You can definitely tell he's got the scars on his face. Like, they're like the one side you see, scar from the cut in his mouth, kind of similar to that of Heath Ledger's. And I guess we can kind of get a glimpse as to what the Joker makeup might look like, because at the beginning, Batman fights these Joker goons. They got clown makeup on, so I'm assuming if they're not goons, then they're like one of those people that every time Joker's in jail, they're like, oh, we need to carry on what he's doing while he's gone, so that way when he comes back, it's all caught up in this, that, and the other. It just, it was interesting how they kind of just threw him in there. Hi, me again, sorry. So, there was a couple other things I forgot to mention that I kind of thought in this movie. One was, it's weird that the Joker would be in Arkham already, because when you talk about Batman starting out, one of his first major villains was the Riddler. The Joker didn't really exist yet. However, my friend pointed out that maybe he wasn't the Joker when he got caught. He was whoever he was, and now he's kind of gone insane to the point where he's the Joker now, so there was that. And Matt Reeves had mentioned that there was another Joker scene that was cut out of the movie where we would have saw him better face-wise and all that stuff. We would have got a better idea as to what the character was going to be going further into the future with these movies, and he said it will most likely make the deleted scenes on the Blu-ray cut. So apparently there's more of the Joker that we have yet to see that Matt Reeves wanted to put in the movie, but I guess just either didn't feel like it fit anywhere, or maybe he was told to cut it, I don't know. So yeah, there's that little information that I left out too that I felt was pretty important. And it was confirmed by Matt Reeves, the director himself, that Barry Keoghan, not sure how to say his name, the guy from Eternals, is the guy that plays the Joker, as most of you would look up his name online for the cast listing, and he's either credited as Officer Stanley Merkel, or I think in the movie he was credited as unnamed Arkham prisoner, but Matt Reeves confirmed it was the Joker, and it wasn't just an Easter egg. He definitely plans on using the Joker at some point, whether it be for the sequel or something else. I don't know, but one of the two spin-offs we're getting from this movie, one is the Penguin, so we're going to see more of Colin Farrell and I guess kind of how he rises up to power in this sense. And the other one is going to involve Arkham Asylum, so part of me is like, maybe he'll do that since the Joker and Riddler are kind of buddy-buddy, they'll team up and kind of do an Arkham Asylum thing based off the video game, but I don't know at this point. But with this movie, this is the Batman movie we've wanted. I mean, the cinematography is excellent. Just some of these shots in this movie, I think, are better than what we've ever gotten from any Batman movie. The score is great because it's a mixture of, like, triumphant Batman music mixed in with the more, you know, Halloween type, like the piano in the score definitely kind of sounds like it took inspiration from the Halloween theme song because it wanted you to feel that sense of horror just a little bit, like reality of this serial killer that was out there doing this, that, and the other. Like, it was just so fantastic and very, very well done in this sense. And the fact that this Batman movie wasn't just action and thriller but horror mixed in, it's not like your typical horror, but there's some things that might, you know, pop out and scare you every so often. And of course there's the beginning that just kind of so eerie because you're just like, man, this could be a real thing. There really is people out in the world who will stalk somebody that they want to kill and do it, and they might do it in the most gruesome way possible, which is what the Riddler does. It just feels more realistic than what Jim Carrey's comic booky version brought. Now, granted, I like Jim Carrey's version because he did his job as to what the character was supposed to be then, but it's still weird looking at it when you jump from Jim Carrey's version of the Riddler to this version of the Riddler. It's just two completely different things. Like, one is way out of Jim Carrey's ballpark, and he probably would have never been able to pull this role off even now, and the other one is just supposed to be this more realistic serial killer type based off the Zodiac Killer Michael Myers. Like, it was so just wow. This movie is great. This movie is excellent. Would I put it ahead of The Dark Knight? Probably not. That's still number one, but it definitely gave it a run for its money. And with Robert Pattinson, I dare say that this is the best Batman interpretation we've got. Because when you think of Bruce Wayne, it's always just broken down, beaten, and just fucking deranged. Like, he just doesn't know what to do. Especially with this being like an early adaptation of Batman. He does it well on both sides. Whether he's Bruce Wayne or whether he's Batman, he just shows that he's just so distraught that he just doesn't give a shit. Like, one of my favorite scenes of the whole entire movie is when he finds out what the Riddler's plan is about flooding Gotham, all this, that, and the other. He goes back to the Riddler's apartment after he meets him in Arkham Asylum to kind of, you know, go through more clues and evidence, and the security guard that was there was like, hey, and, you know, instead of just saying something, he's just pointing the flashlight at the cop, and then he turns back around, goes back to what he's doing, and the cop is trying to help him, the cop is speaking, he's like, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. Batman will just kind of stop again and look at him, and then just go back to what he's doing. He's kind of just like, he's just like, please shut the fuck up, like, stop. But he doesn't want to say it, and eventually the security guard does help Batman find the secret plan for Riddler, and he just, it's funny that he has an entire conversation with a dude, and he doesn't say a fucking word. Like, that was just really funny to me. This Batman wasn't necessarily comforting until the end when, you know, he's saving those people, and this one person's getting airlifted, you know, he kind of, you know, holds their hand until he can't, you know, reach them anymore as they're going up. So he definitely does become more comforting at the end, but toward the beginning and most of the movie, he's just kind of like, they're like, whoa, who are you? And he'll just kind of just jet out of there without saying anything. He just kind of scares a lot of the people, but now that majority of Gotham City, the citizens and the mayor and all that are on his side, he can, you know, trust them and, you know, just do the whole fear thing for the villains and the bad guys and the thugs and all that stuff. So that's when he really starts to find out how he's going to do things from here on out. So yeah, I'm definitely excited for more to come with this. Hopefully we do get the trilogy. There's definitely going to be a sequel. I mean, Matt Reeves said the sequel will depend on how good or bad this movie does, and this movie is not only getting rave reviews from the critics, but from the fans, and it's drawing at the box office already. So expect the sequel, and I do expect this trilogy to be complete. If there's characters that I want to see in the sequel and the third movie, I think obviously the Court of Owls is the big one. I think eventually Matt Reeves will put them in there, and maybe the Joker, but ones that we haven't seen in a while. I wouldn't mind another Poison Ivy, although again, I highly doubt it. I would love to see Clayface and Calendar Man get involved, even though Calendar Man was seen in the Suicide Squad. I feel like you can kind of do the same horror serial killer type thing with him because it's basically what he is, and I think it'd just be very interesting to see Matt Reeves take on that. And I guess too, Mr. Freeze. Oh my god, his story's so dark that Matt Reeves can take that and do so much with it. It would just be, it would be awesome. But again, Matt Reeves doesn't even know really what the sequel holds right now, because one of the production team guys said it could be at minimum 5 years until we get the sequel. He said don't think you'll have to wait that longer, but again, we'll see, because it probably all depends on Robert Pattinson's contract in itself and, you know, Matt Reeves' contract with this movie. But the fact that he has total control of these movies, he said Warner Brothers didn't really bother him with a lot. It just goes to show you that he put passion into it, and with Warner Brothers not stepping in and being like, changes, we finally got the freaking Batman movie we wanted, and for once DC is continuing to stay consistent. I really think since Birds of Prey, things have been good for DC. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of Birds of Prey as a movie. I think it's okay, but it did well with critics and the fans again, and the only reason it was a box office bomb was because it came out literally right when COVID was starting. And of course there's the Suicide Squad, which again, box office bomb, but people loved it, and it got that successful spin-off, the Peacemaker spin-off on HBO Max, and now we got this coming out with other DC movies coming, and, you know, there are probably a couple DC movies I think that will disappoint, but in the end, DC is consistent for once, and it seems like Warner Brothers is kind of staying more out of the way. I mean, look how it turns out. Maybe Warner Brothers is starting to learn. I don't know. Hopefully, but yeah. That's it for me. You guys can tell me in the comments below if you've seen this movie, then did you enjoy it? What were your favorite parts, your least favorite parts? Because it is a 3-hour movie, so there's going to be some things in the movie where you're just like, you know, whatever, I really don't care for it that much. There was a part that was just boring me, so I went to the bathroom, came back, and I missed nothing important. So I picked a good time to go to the bathroom at that point in time in the theater. But until then, stay safe out there, wear your mask, get vaccinated, and I will catch you all in the next one.
Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb.